It was just over 20 years ago that the corporate giants at General Motors decided to take yet another Grand Slam-sized swing at creating the ideal image for a small, American-built family SUV. And the end result was this, the Chevrolet Equinox. And with yet another huge thank you to the Parkway family of dealerships out here in Kingwood, Texas, we're here to see if this new 2026 model still has what it takes to be that perfect-sized idea for finding new roads. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so once again, you're seeing it from my perspective, and this is the first time, or at least the first time in a long time, that I have driven one of General Motors' newest products. I think the last time I drove anything that was this new was, gosh, probably 2 or 3 years ago, and even then I only drove it for a couple of minutes. But the thing about the Equinox that surprises me right off the bat is that even though this one is the RS, the Rally Sport, or the sportiest edition of the Equinox you can buy, it's surprisingly docile. I mean, yes, you can feel that they have firmed up the suspension just a little bit, and there is a little bit of that, not so much vibration or harshness, but there is a little bit more noise coming into the cabin than I'm sure a lot of people would expect, at least right off the bat, for an SUV, or crossover, I guess to be politically correct, that as this one sits is a little over $35,000, which means that not only is this thing facing some serious competition, but that it can even go more expensive than this for a compact crossover, which I still don't quite get why even a compact crossover like this can be so expensive, let alone, even though this thing weighs circa 3,500 pounds, a little over, a little under, GM has decided that it deserves a 1.5 liter turbocharged, direct injected 4-cylinder engine. So 1,500 cc's to move 3,500 pounds. And even though this one is front wheel drive with the availability to get it in all wheel drive, I mean, 175 horsepower and a little over 180 foot-pounds of torque. That's like trying to move a mountain with, well, I guess as the late great Jeremy Clarkson once said, trying to move a mountain using the motor from a food blender. And you can kind of see it also when it comes to being efficient. Now, the fuel numbers kind of waver back and forth depending on who you talk to, but the general consensus is this front-wheel drive RS will do 26 miles to the gallon in the city and between 28 to 31 miles per gallon on the highway. Now, the thing is, it achieves that not just by the fact the engine is literally the size of a small walnut, but it's because that unless you get the all-wheel drive, this front-wheel drive model uses a continuously variable automatic transmission. To be fair with you, I don't always think that's the best option, even though an infinite number of competitors to the Equinox use a CVT in one form or another. However, I will say that with the all-wheel drive, I think it'll unleash the RS sort of sporty personality just a little bit more, because the traditional torque converter automatic in that bumps the power, or at least the torque, up to over 200 foot-pounds. So it provides a little bit more oomph when you need it. But then again, though, this isn't meant to be a sports SUV or a sporty crossover. If you want that, buy something European that's going to cost you probably, 1.5 to almost double the price tag of this. For this, though, it's incredibly comfortable. Visibility is fantastic. The seats are a joy to sit on. I've got loads of room in here for being a compact. And on top of that, like I said, without any sort of real, noise, vibration, harshness, anything that most people would look for, it's just incredibly relaxing to drive and the perfect vehicle for family get-togethers, road trips, I mean, you name it. But even as I turn into a corner, it may be a little bit more relaxed at slower speeds, but I gotta say, it's strange being in a mainstream, somewhat sporty edition of a crossover and feeling any kind of feedback in the steering at all. I mean, it's not pinpoint accurate, but then again, it's responsive. It does exactly what it needs to. And on top of that, the Rally Sport, or the Sport suspension rather, it does communicate a little bit more up into the cabin. Not gonna lie, it's definitely not smooth or cushiony, maybe like the lower end LT trim would be, or maybe even the Equinox Active with, I almost want to call it a half-witted Z71 package, where it's more like an off-road version. But all the same, if you really want to, show it who's boss, you can, but don't expect to go anywhere anytime soon. And it's so weird, like I was just half throttle there and it didn't feel like it was going very many places at all. I mean, yeah, you can find new roads as Chevrolet wants you to, but with a CVT powering only 1500 cc's and moving around this kind of weight, it might take you a little more time to get there than you would want. But I'm not going to dog this thing too much. This is a mainstream, affordable family crossover. But Chevy has also been doing something right, because even in the face, like I was saying, of some very stiff competition, they've sold over 3 million of these since 2004, when the Equinox name first came about. But in the end, I guess you could say the Equinox is really a case of pick your poison. And again, that seems to be more of a common theme with these compact crossovers. They offer such a breadth of flavors across a multitude of different price points. So again, you might be spending over $30,000, or maybe in this one's case, over $35,000, and yet you don't really need to have every single whiz and gadget in order to accomplish the task that these cars set out to do in the beginning. You want something with plenty of room if you're over 6 feet tall? Sure, I got plenty of it. You want something with a good bit of technology that, of course, we'll talk about a little bit later? Sure. Do you want something that's safe? Of course. You're going to put you, your spouse, your kids, and everybody else in it. The fact of the matter is, Chevy's still doing it, and they're still trying to do it right. There's just no way of getting around it. And I'll tell you what's interesting is that sitting here, you would never know in a million years, unless you pull over, stop, and take a look at this thing, that you're driving something that looks as truly unique as this and a lot of other small Chevrolet and GM crossovers have become over the years. Now, while many might describe the Equinox's driving capabilities as everything from humdrum to just plain relaxing, when it comes to its styling, this is where I think the company's biggest controversy lies. All of their smaller crossovers and SUVs are looking exactly the same. As a matter of fact, when I saw this new Equinox for the first time, I thought, well, is it a Trax that's just been enlarged a bit? Is it a Trailblazer that's kind of been lovingly massaged in all the right ways? Or is it a Traverse that had the third row of seats ripped out of it and melted down in a fire a bit? Well, you wouldn't be wrong with either statement. Chevrolet has gone out of their way to give it a little bit more of a sportier appeal, although at first glance you wouldn't exactly notice it unless you saw things like the blacked out grille with the black bow tie. This particular car also comes standard with the company's IntelliBeam LED headlights, so your main headlights are down here in the lower part of the bumper with your LED daytime running lights up top. And of course they have kind of worked their way around the front fascia, but it's not too recognizable as the sportiest trim that the Equinox offers, but I guess you could say it's enough of a unique factor. But for a small additional cost on this particular car, not only do we have the Lakeshore blue metallic exterior, which is absolutely gorgeous in this Texas sunlight, but it includes features that some people might say they would want as standard on a vehicle of this price point. Things like the high-definition surround view monitor, rear pedestrian detection, and something that I thought would have been standard again for around the price point we're looking at here, your front fog lamps are also an additional extra. Now, regardless of what you might think about its styling, the Equinox does have at least two major talking points when it comes to making this thing a real competitor in the respective compact crossover segment. Number one, it's 183.2 inches long, which means it is right in the firing line of some of the best and hottest sellers from Japan, from South Korea, and even the few of those sitting in this category coming from Europe. But whereas those have tried to integrate a little bit more elegance, a little bit more of a smoothened profile into their DNA, this one, on the other hand, another big talking point, is that it's a little bit more edgy, it's a little bit more boxy. It almost feels like whoever designed this thing spent way too much time in geometry class. But nonetheless, I think that's just right for being a little bit more unique in this segment. Not to mention, putting it on a set of wheels that is not too big and not too small may have been just the right move as well. You may not know it, but this car is wearing 19-inch carbon flash metallic and machine-faced alloy wheels, wrapped in a squared 235/55 Continental tire setup. Honestly, again, it's just about being the right size with the Equinox here. Now, even though this thing might be wearing an American badge, this particular car doesn't exactly carry an American size list of options. And quite frankly, for $35,000, a lot of people may say, oh, well, I expect more for a price tag like that. But you also got to think there are some things that people could just do without. For example, on this particular car, we don't have any form of a sunroof, not a standard size or even a panoramic one. But for me, that's just one less thing to break, right? But I am enjoying the fact that the RS gives you the blacked out mirrors with the addition of those optional surround view cameras underneath. This particular model comes standard with the blind spot mitigation and collision avoidance. And it also comes standard with GM's advanced keyless access, put through quite frankly, one of the most uniquely shaped key fobs I've seen in quite some time, but it's very basic. It doesn't need to be out there. You have lock, unlock. This one comes standard with a remote start and a power tailgate and a panic, not to mention the releasable key blade that you can simply pull out of the bottom of the key fob in case the car or the key goes dead. But as for using it, well, that's where the Equinox, at least in this case, is a little behind the times. In order to get into the vehicle, you have to use solely the little silver button on the front door handles. You push it once, the car opens up, and if you want to lock it, just do the same thing again. And as if we needed a bit of a repeat performance to how we were addressing the front of this car, when it comes to its rear end, it's pretty much, well, not quite a full-on case of copy pasta or plagiarism here, but again, you are seeing styling elements that sort of transition between all of the smaller Chevrolet crossovers and SUVs. You look at these full LED taillights, and I do like the styling of them, however, with the clear centers with the red lights inside and these almost like fang-like projections hanging off the edges of them. But you also have the black bow tie and the applicable Rally Sport badge down here on the tailgate, along with things like the rear park assist and a little bit more gloss black just to kind of tie everything together. But remember that small little additional cost I was talking about on this particular vehicle? Well, that is again the safety and security package. And one of the other features that is in a bit of a weird position for what it is the digital rear view mirror camera. Now, that's not unheard of in this particular segment, but most of those cameras are hidden inside the back windshield. This one, it sits exposed to the elements right underneath the LED third brake light. But you don't buy an Equinox or any small crossover like this for just how it looks or what few features it may have or not have. What you buy it for is what happens when you open the tailgate. And again, as heavy as the competition is with this thing, it's not exactly a Yordan Alvarez game-winning World Series home run here. Yes, I am from Houston. I will continue with the Astros puns until the day that I die. But it is still quite a competitive amount of space with what you're working with here. Behind the Equinox's 60/40 split fold rear seats, you're looking at 29.8 cubic feet of cargo volume, which sounds like plenty, especially if it's just you and maybe your spouse, maybe a kid or two. It's more than enough space to at least get the family grocery shopping trip or perhaps some sports equipment here in the back. But if perhaps, let's say you're moving some larger items, kick those rear seats down, and now you're looking at 63.5 cubic feet of usable cargo volume. Oh, and if you're expecting that under this floor there's either just an empty space or perhaps just a fix-a-flat kit like many modern cars have, fear not. Chevy has thought of that and included a 17-inch compact spare tire under the rear floor. So yes, it's not a breadwinner and it's not exactly the biggest of the compact crossovers either. But if you are looking for something that's practical in all the right ways, you couldn't go wrong with what I'm sitting in right here. Okay, so this Equinox might not be the fastest thing on four wheels, and its styling subjectively may be a bit bolder than some people might like, but that hasn't stopped Chevy, or GM in general, from focusing on what matters most with a vehicle like this, which is comfort, functionality, and accessibility. Accessibility, you can pretty much check that off the list. It's in a price point that's very competitive with a lot of other compact crossovers. And in terms of being comfortable, I mean, look, I'm over 6 feet tall, or maybe right at. Again, it just depends on what the doctor says. And you can feel the room in here. This seat is exactly where I want it, and I just have so much room to move around. Not to mention, regardless of which exterior color you pick, if you get the Rally Sport trim like this, there's only one available interior option, which is the black and red synthetic leather upholstery. Now, the black and red, I don't mind. I actually think it does add enough of that sporty touch. I am a little bit confused about the black and red on the dash, however. I think in some cases it looks a little bit gimmicky, and I mean ever so slightly. If this car was maybe in white or black on the outside rather than the blue that we have on this one, I think that color combo would fit a little bit better. But again, with certain exterior colors, it may not be the perfect match for everyone. Now, speaking of these seats, in this particular example with the options that we have, they are heated only, and the steering wheel, which is also leather wrapped and incredibly comfortable, is heated as well. But if you want ventilated seats, again giving this car a bit more of a competitive edge, well, you might want to have to ask the bank for a little bit of a bigger loan, because you are going to have to spend extra in order to get that feature as an option. But in terms of the driving position, again, the steering wheel is just the right size. You have these teeny little paddle shifters right at the back, which honestly I don't think is even a necessity, considering, as we saw, this car doesn't even have a sport mode, or at least one that I could even find. But you do have your multimedia functions hidden on the back as well. That's for things like your radio volume and adjusting the track if you're playing Spotify, for example. But again, going on for more of those safety features, the safety and security package isn't the only way to get all the safety features on this Equinox. For example, this one comes standard with the adaptive cruise control, again, you know, combined with blind spot monitoring and all that stuff. But you also have your multimedia functions, and everything is just right in front of you. Same thing with the flat bottom design for the steering wheel, which the RS is the only one to get that, by the way. But one thing that is quite concerning, it's a bit more of a safety minded thing for me, is how you access things like the headlights, for example. You'd think it would be simple. It could be here on the left indicator stalk, or maybe down here by my left knee, but no, you actually have to go into the central infotainment system in order to access that. Now, if I'm driving, the last thing I want to be doing is screwing around with the screen in the middle while I'm trying to pay attention to the road at the same time. Not exactly the smartest move in terms of putting a simple necessity in such an odd place. But it really isn't even the functionality or even the accessibility that can throw a lot of people off. It's how it's portrayed to you through not only an 11-inch digital gauge cluster, which can be adjusted. You can take away certain bits of information that you don't need, apart from the obvious stuff like your fuel gauge, speed, maybe even your tachometer. You know, that one's kind of a hit and miss. You don't necessarily need it there, which you can take that out of the display if you so desire. But then you look in the center and you have an 11.3-inch Google-based infotainment system. Now, it's not the fact that Google decided to take over GM's infotainment, because you do have standard things like a Google Maps based navigation, you have wireless Android Auto and wireless CarPlay. However, trying to find certain elements that are somewhat necessary for infotainment or even vehicle purposes can sometimes take quite a few tabs to go through before you finally get to what you want. But therein lies a few little surprises. First off, there is a function where it prevents the driver from putting this car into any gear other than park without your seatbelt on. I guess Chevrolet definitely was thinking of safety with that one. Not to mention, you have a teen driving function. You literally have everything you could want, plus the kitchen sink, well, except for the climate controls, those are mounted below the screen, all within one infotainment system. But there is one other thing that is missing in this particular car that I would have liked to have experienced, but you know, you could do without it if you aren't willing to spend the money. So in this case, we have a 6-speaker Chevrolet branded audio system, although you can get a higher end Bose audio system as an available upgrade. Now for 6 speakers with the size of the vehicle that it is, it's not bad. It doesn't exactly have the biggest amount of bass I've ever wanted or experienced, but I mean, I can't really complain if, say, I'm on a road trip and I just want something to listen to. Now, assuming you've got your music set the right way and you don't really mind the fact you have a good few less speakers than other competitors might offer, well, suppose you need to make yourself even more comfortable by using the dual zone climate control. Again, it's its own setup down here below. And again, you have things like heated seats, automatic AC, your temperature controls, and so on. But then you look below it and you have one USB-C and one USB-A port, which I didn't think I would see one of those in a modern vehicle again. You have a little bit of storage. This is big enough for, say, your phone. You can put it in there as such. And even more, this particular one has been equipped with a wireless charger. And word of warning, don't put any kind of big metallic case on your phone and then try to stick it in the wireless charger. It will overheat your phone in a heartbeat. Believe me, I know from experience. But you then get a couple of decent sized cup holders, a little more storage, a rather large drive mode button, which I honestly think is pointless because again, we only saw that in this case, there are 2 driving modes that I've been able to find thus far. And to top it all off, you have a decent sized center console, but the opening isn't necessarily the widest, but it definitely is quite deep to say the least. Now, if you're someone who prefers a more rearward experience in your compact crossover, i.e. just getting into the back seats, well, the Equinox isn't exactly the best nor the worst place you'll ever spend time. It's the best for me because you can still see I have loads of legroom in here despite sitting behind myself, again, right around 6 feet tall. Tons of headroom back here. I can definitely get myself comfortable in more ways than one in the back of this car, but it's not exactly the best way when it comes to how much tech you have back here. As a matter of fact, in this one, I have 2 USB-Cs at the back of the console. You have 2 rearward facing air vents. You have a little bit of extra storage, but you also have just the standard little cup holders and armrest if you want to put your arm on something or have a drink. But the one thing that's not really sort of swaying me about being in the back seat of this car is the fact that you can't reach down on the side of the seats, pull a lever, and lean them back a little bit. And not to mention, if you are somebody who I guess suffers from a bit of motion sickness, the rear seats are actually a little bit lower than some of the others in the segment, so they don't have that sort of stadium style effect. But still, for a back seat, the view back here is quite commanding. You can see quite a lot going on in here. So again, not the best, not the worst, but definitely still a pretty comfortable place to sit altogether. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this now concludes our review and drive of the 2026 Chevrolet Equinox RS. Now, once again, before any final thoughts happen here, I have to once again send a huge thank you to the Parkway family of dealerships right out here in Kingwood, Texas. They just got this thing into their inventory with less than 200 miles on it. It's hard to believe. It's a 2026 and it's already on the pre-owned market. Now, I'm not going to make any guesses as to why that is, but if you guys like this particular vehicle and it's still available at the time of this video, take a look in the description box below where I've provided all their applicable contact info so you can not only find out more information about cars like this, but also some of the brand new Kia and Mazda inventory that they also have available. But anyways, aside from all the dealership stuff, quick final notes with the new Equinox here. Now, yes, this is an American branded crossover, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's completely drab. Yes, the performance is not as quick as some of its competitors, but it's on par with a lot of those other vehicles that so many people gravitate towards year after year. Not to mention, again, the value proposition for all that you get is still a factor. I mean, without all the options, you're talking maybe right around the $30,000 range, quite apt for the size of the vehicle that you get and just everything that it has to offer. But if you guys perhaps like what you see with this Equinox, or perhaps you learned something about it at the same time, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, the money, the views, all that stuff, none of it would be possible or even a factor if it wasn't for all of the support of all of you. Now, in the end, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.